Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Visionary Leaders Collective podcast. I'm Aisha Harley, and I am so thrilled to be your host and one of the visionary founders. Please join us every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time for enlightening conversations that delve deep into wellness and harness the transformative powers of doTERRA essential oils. In case you ever miss an episode, you can catch up on YouTube, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. Stay connected with us at hellovisionary.life, and don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter, text reminders, and if you feel inclined to leave us a review, we super appreciate it. Before we get started with the call today, I want to make sure that you all know that BOGO week starts today and runs through June 21st. Plus, this is a little different. On all 145 PV orders, you will get a bottle of our very cherished Blue Lotus. You do not want to miss out on the Blue Lotus. This is, of course, while supplies last. And we don't just say this to freak you out, but things do tend to sell out quickly. So if you want that Blue Lotus, make sure and grab it and/or any of the BOGOs. If you stay tuned on the Essential Wellness Facebook page, Ariana is going to go live today and do a special highlight about Blue Lotus at 11:30, I believe, right, Ariana? So today we have a very special and delightful guest, Miss Molly Lewis, who is not only a personal lifelong friend of mine. We went to high school together. She is the co-owner of Dog River Pet Supply in Hood River, Oregon. And she's going to be sharing her expertise on dog and cat nutrition, as well as the vital importance of holistic care for your pets. We will also share some of our favorite essential oils to address issues such as fleas and ticks, and of course, how to keep your pets calm and feeling safe during the dreaded fireworks that are around the corner, plus so much more. Molly, it is such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. You are such a wealth of information, and you are just so powerful. You've educated not only myself, but so many other people on the value of proper nutrition. So welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here for sure. So
I would love for you to get started and just telling us a little bit of your own journey of how you got on this path, because prior, Molly made books and is very artistic as well. And then before I know it, she's opening this amazing pet store. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you get started in the holistic pet care space?
yeah, absolutely. So like a lot of people, I got started on this journey because I had a very sick pet. And I had a newly adopted dog, and she was a mess. She had eye infections, ear infections, skin infections, anal gland infections. She wouldn't eat. She was just a mess. And I would, take her to the vet and ask questions, and they would give me two answers every time and a lot of drugs, and she never got better. And so it was what really prompted me to start diving into food, particularly, and then subsequently natural medicine as well. So, a lot of people who get into holistic healthcare for pets get into it because they have had a sick pet and have not found answers with conventional treatments. So that was the beginning of it, which was almost 20 years ago now. And that dog lived to be 18 years old, and she didn't die of anything other than just being an old dog. And I attribute it almost entirely to changing her diet and not over medicating her, basically. So, and she was a big dog too, and bold dog in the world. So that was the genesis of how I got into it. I remember back in the day, I had to take her to the vet because she had an abscessed anal gland. And when I brought her back from the vet, they handed me a limp dog in my arms and they had dosed her on morphine and she couldn't hold her head up and she couldn't keep her tongue in her mouth. And I just said, I'm never going to do this again. So that was the beginning of it. And at that time, there were not very many pet supply stores around that had options, but there was one near my house. And I walked in the door and I started to ask questions and talking about food and nutrition and how food works in the body and how food can heal the body. And so that's what got me started, actually at that point, making my own homemade dog food. And which is not the back then there weren't really many choices for pet food, not more natural pet foods. And so my choice at that point for my dog was to make my own dog food. That's certainly not for everybody. And honestly, if you think you're going to go down that route, it's really important to have a conversation with a holistic veterinarian because it's important to get it right because you can really do damage if you don't get it right. So that was the beginning of how I got started with all of it. And then as Aisha said, was trying to make a living as an artist, which is not an easy thing to do. And I got a part-time job at that pet supply store that I had walked into asking questions about pet food. And well, now we're 18 years later and I own my own pet supply store and I help thousands and thousands of pets every year with holistic remedies. I mean, we have a whole beautiful supplement shelf of all natural medicine that addresses almost every single condition that you might choose to go to the vet for. And we have something holistic that can address that issue. But mostly it all comes down to food. I always tell my employees, before you try and sell something on a supplement shelf, talk about food because food is what truly can heal the body. So yeah, so now we've had the pet store for 5.5 years. And one of the things I will say to anybody who's listening is the things that you learn today, your job is to then go out and tell that to all of your people because that's how things are going to change in this industry. It's not going to come from the top down. It's going to come from people experiencing how natural medicines, food, essential oils, homeopathy, how those things work in animal bodies and how effective they are, and using them on your own pets and telling your friends and family about it, because that's how things are going to change in this industry. So that's
This is so powerful because everything you're saying is exactly what we say about the human body. It's no
yeah,
different, right?
yes, it is no different. And that's really important. That's very important because so many times when I have conversations with customers about their pets, they all of a sudden this light bulb will go off and they'll say, well, my body doesn't do well on processed foods either. And I'm like, no body does. Whether you're a frog or a dog or a human, every body does better on fresh foods than it does on processed foods. And same thing goes with medicines. We're going to talk a bit about flea and tick remedies today. So, conventional treatment is that you give your dog an oral pill every month for the entire life of that dog. And those pills are pesticides. And, you know, we wouldn't do that for ourselves as humans every month for our entire lives till we're senior citizens. We wouldn't do that. And it doesn't, it's no more, it's no better for dog bodies or cat bodies than it is for human bodies. So, all of those things that we don't even consider about pets, but that I'm sure that this audience is a group of people who consider what they put in their body. But it's amazing how it oftentimes doesn't translate to what we put in our pets' bodies because you go to the vet and they're like, here's this thing, put it in the dog's body, do it every month. And, there is absolutely a time and a place and value to veterinary medicine, but, think about what that does to a body, particularly flea and tick treatments every month for the entire life of an animal. So yeah, so the things that we consider for our own bodies are almost entirely applicable for dogs and cats. Their bodies function very similarly to ours. there aren't too many differences. They have shorter digestive tracts than we do. So, things happen more quickly in their digestive systems. But other than that, the general rules and concerns that we would have for our own bodies are very applicable to dogs and cats too.
So, can you talk to us a little bit more? I know that oftentimes, people will get a dog or a cat and they'll buy a bag of kibble and they'll feed that bag of kibble to their dog for the rest of their life.
Yeah,
They they don't change the protein.
yeah.
Maybe they adjust it from a puppy formula to an adult formula to a senior formula. But can you share with us if somebody is just, and there's no shame, this is
No
all about
shame. We
education.
we all started
Um,
with a bag of kibble. Every single person who gets a pet starts with a bag of kibble, and that's fine.
so, somebody might be hearing like, okay, I'm not making my own food, but I am giving
Yeah,
my animal kibble. So where would I even begin?
yeah,
Can you give
that's
us a few pointers?
totally. That's a great question. So yes, there is no shame in kibble. In the world of pet foods, there is a wide range of really, really terrible foods to, mediocre to like DIY homemade food, which is an amazing way to feed a dog. But the one thing that you don't want to do is like look at a commercial on TV of a golden retriever bounding through a field and buy that dog food, because those companies are spending way more on marketing than they are on formulating their pet foods. So, if you're seeing a commercial for it on national TV, it's probably not the best pet food. The only exception I would say to that is Farmer's Dog, which is kind of new on the market, but they're really kind of breaking breaking through boundaries that have traditionally been in pet food. So not everybody. So um, there are kind of different classes of pet food. There's kibble, there's dry processed kibble, there's canned food, there's freeze-dried food, there's dehydrated food, and then there's raw frozen food. And one thing to remember is that the most important thing for any body, doesn't matter what body it is that they eat a wide variety of foods. That, one bag of kibble for the rest of your life is just absurd. Like, there's no body on earth that's going to benefit from that kind of feeding. What tends to happen is that the dogs can do all right on it for 4, 5, 6 years, and then the wheels begin to fall off the bus, and you begin to see itchy skin and digestive upset and licking between the toes and weepy eyes and ear infections and these kind of external symptoms of sort of bigger problems that are happening internally. And, mostly that comes from not having enough nutrients. Like, the body can't really utilize the nutrients in processed foods as well as it can in fresh foods. So, even to get nutrients out of the kibble food is a lot of work for the body. It takes a lot of work for the body to digest that. And usually, because dogs and cats have shorter digestive systems, it's kind of through their body before they even benefit from the vitamins and minerals that are added to that food. So the kitten is really distracting me right now.
Yeah.
She's like
So
crawling
cute.
all over. So yeah, the whole idea of feeding one food for the duration of an animal's life is totally a fallacy. You know, it is okay to feed kibble. It's totally fine to feed kibble, and there are better and worse ones out there on the market. If you're going to start delving into, what to feed your pet, I really recommend going to a small independent pet supply store, because those people are trained and knowledgeable about food and nutrition for all varieties of dogs and cats and breeds. So it helps to have a conversation, because if you're going to go on the internet and just search like what's the best dog food, you're going to just get a bunch of sponsored ads for Purina Pro Plan pretty much. So, go ask questions and try samples, and, trust your dog and cat too, because they know what their bodies need. If they don't eat something, there's a really good reason for it. It's not because they don't like the taste, it's because it doesn't feel good in their bodies. And they're very, dogs are biologically programmed to not eat something that's going to make them sick. And so if they're not eating something, there's a very good reason for that. That said, like golden retrievers will eat pine cones. And so you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. But, if they're not eating something, there's a good reason for it. And you don't ever want to force an animal to eat something. I think forcing an animal to do anything is not the right, animals need to consent to the things that, we are their guardians. They should consent to the choices that we're making for their bodies. That goes for all sorts of things. That goes for training, that goes for food, that goes for grooming. If they're averse to it, there's a really good reason for it. So if you're feeding kibble, it's totally fine to do that, but try to boost the bowl. Try to do something a little bit extra. So you can crack an egg on top of it. Dogs can eat raw eggs. They can eat the shell if they're farm eggs or from Aisha's backyard eggs. The dogs can eat the shells. It's a great source of calcium, and it's a great source of glucosamine and omega fatty acids. Eggs have every nutrient to sustain life, so it's a really, really rich and healthy thing to add to a dog's diet. Sardines are a great thing to add. Raw milk, raw cheese, real food. Just, I call it boosting the bowl. Bone broth is a great thing to add in there. Bone broth has trace minerals and collagen and glucosamine and calcium and all these wonderful things that are really beneficial for the digestive system and for the skin and coat and for joint support. So those are just kind of some really simple home things that you can do to add a little bit extra to your bowl. And for cats, cats are a little trickier. They are much more particular about what they eat than dogs are. So it takes a little bit of work. I usually tell people that you have to be patient with cats, because it can take 6 months to a year to figure out what kinds of foods are really working in their bodies and what they want and what they like. But cats need real food too. They need real food. They're obligate carnivores, so dogs are carnivores. So they eat a primarily meat-based diet, but they do eat a little bit of veggies. So think about a dog in the wild would eat a prey animal, like say a rabbit, and it would eat the whole rabbit. It would eat the ears and the fur and the organs and the bones. And the only veggies that it would get would be whatever is in the stomach of that animal. So that's a very small percentage, but it matters. The veggies and the greens matter in there. Cats, on the other hand, are obligate carnivores. They only need meat. They don't need pea protein. They don't need sweet potato. They don't need, rice. Like those things are not species appropriate for cats. So cats are obligate carnivores. They do really, really well on a meat, bone, and organ meat diet. That's what their bodies are built to digest. So, I usually when I talk about cats, I think feeding a cat kibble is one of the worst things we've ever done to cats, is start feeding them processed, shelf-stable meat products. That's why you see so many kitties with inflammatory bowel disease and kidney disease, and those are the two main things that we see with cats that are eating processed foods. So, but again, even with cats, add a bit of, give them some egg, give them some raw milk, give them some raw cheese. Those are all things that their bodies can do really well with. If you're going to feed them meats, if you're getting meat from a grocery store, it's really important to cook it, because those meats are intended to be cooked. So there's a much higher tolerance for pathogens in grocery store meats that are intended to be cooked. So again, going to a local independent pet supply store, you'll have a lot of options of either raw or cooked foods for dogs and cats that are intended to be served raw. So those foods are much more like the equivalent of sushi grade meats. They're intended to be eaten raw, so the scrutiny for pathogens is much, much higher. Fish for cats. Can you speak to what to add cats diets? Fish for cats, yeah. Fish for cats is totally fine. Again, if you are buying fish at a grocery store, I would recommend cooking it. All of these things that you buy at a grocery store are meant to be cooked. So, those things have been in transport, they've been packaged, they've been unpackaged, they've been in a freezer truck, they've been moved from the freezer truck to the grocery store. So it's really important if you're getting meat at a grocery store to cook it. So for kitties, though, it's really important to, well, dogs and cats, it's really important to get it complete and balanced if you're feeding it 100%, your own homemade foods. If you're feeding it supplementally, have at it. Whatever you want to try it. Like I said, they know what their bodies need. If they eat the yolk of a quail egg, that's because they need it and they love it. Their bodies are just soaking up all those nutrients. But there are, thankfully now in the world of premium pet foods, there are a lot of options of fresh foods for dogs and cats. So that's kind of my greatest mission, is to get animals onto real foods off of processed foods, because one, you'll alleviate a lot of long-term and chronic health problems. You won't have a dog with allergies. You won't have a cat with IBD. Those things just don't happen when they're eating a species appropriate diet. So, starting with that, and then, see where you get to. If you still have health issues, then there are all sorts of kind of supplemental things that you can do to boost their immune systems, and reduce inflammation, and augment their skin and coat, and all these great supplemental things you can do. But most of the things that you're going to try and alleviate can be dealt with through food.
I love it.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
it's
I was
okay.
thinking that's kind of a good transition. We talk a lot about this wellness pyramid again,
Yeah,
and in our health, right? And the foundation is nutrition. So
yeah,
we wanted to address that in this call because we're going to move into talking about essential oils and herbs, but we first want to make sure that your foundation with your pet is with nutrition. And I do want to just give a quick shout out to goat's milk, bone broth, sardines, duck eggs are
yeah.
all treats that my dogs love and get on a regular basis. And also chicken and duck hearts. They're a big fan of those. So when Molly's talking about that supplemental diet, there's a lot of things you can do to kind of really fortify them. And I kind of changed that up. So it's not just the same thing every single day. One day I'll give a duck egg and another day I'll give them a little bit of bone broth, and so that keeps them happy. And then I also really pay attention if I've noticed if I give Yuzu or Pluto the same food for too long with the same protein, they don't want to eat it anymore. So whenever that happens, I know that's a good indicator that it's time to change up the protein.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Um,
let's, Ariana, why don't you go ahead and share our presentation? And if you have any questions, please ask them in the chat, or if you're on Facebook, we have people on Facebook joining us. Thank you. We do want to talk about essential oils and herbs and some solutions for the summertime. So go ahead and go to the next slide, Air. So of course, today and every day when we have this podcast, we are talking about using the doTERRA certified pure therapeutic grade essential oils. And this really truly is important because Really, the majority of oils on the marketplace that you find on the grocery shelf or in most stores are actually not pure. You can have heavy metals, artificial ingredients, fillers, pesticides, hexanes, like all kinds of different adulterations can be in those essential oils. Even if these essential oils are in products, the essential oil industry is not regulated. So unless an oil is tested properly, and most companies do not have the funding or the budget to do that, they're not going to be pure. And as we're sharing, as our bodies are super sensitive, our animals' bodies are so sensitive. So we want to make sure that what we're putting on their skin, in their bodies, is totally pure. And that's also where you're going to get the greatest effect. So go ahead and go to the next slide, Eric. So we have made a list of our favorite oils, and this is a combination of oils that Molly put together. And also I added some to the list. There are other oils that are safe, and we are going to give you some references, but we didn't want to overwhelm you too much. So we kind of are highlighting the favorite go-tos. And I will say on this list, lavender, frankincense, also the digestive blend, tamer, copaiba. Those are oftentimes my first go-to. So if you don't have any oils for your pets and you're like, where do I even begin? Lavender, frankincense, again, digestive issues are huge, like go-tos. And Molly, do you have anything to say about this list and kind of some of your favorites that you want to highlight?
I think one of the things we're going to be talking about, they kind of fall into different categories, but the fleas and ticks category, I think once we start talking about that a little bit, I'll just hit on some of the essential oils for that, and then same thing for like calming and fireworks and such. So,
Yeah, we'll get into
but
that.
the list is complete. Yes.
And I know some of you are not seeing the PowerPoint, so if you are just listening to the podcast, I'm going to read the list really quickly. We have lavender, cedarwood, Siberian fir, arborvitae, copaiba, frankincense, lemongrass, peppermint, geranium, jasmine, clove, eucalyptus, serenity, balance, and tamer. And then we're going to talk about how to use those in some of our recipes. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So we do want to talk really quickly about the usage of the oils. Now, it is similar with humans, but also a little different. We can use them aromatically, topically, and internally, but we want to also differentiate a little bit between cats and dogs because cats are way more sensitive to dogs. And it is really important to know that dogs and cats in particular have 200 to 300 million olfactory receptors. So that is the intensity of their smell. To put this in the perspective, us humans only have 5 to 6 million, right? And so just so put that in the scope of an essential oil, like the tiniest amount of essential oil is going to be very powerful to them, much more powerful than we can understand. So it's really important to know that. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Eric. So when using essential oils with animals, this is especially true for cats. Diffusing them is actually a really powerful way to use them. However, you always want to make sure that the animal can leave the room, right? So a lot of people worry like, oh, they're not safe for cats. And again, we want to be very mindful with how we use them with cats. But if you're using the doTERRA essential oils in your diffuser and there's plenty of airflow and the animal has the right to leave the room, then you're totally fine. So if you're just using them even for your own use, they're also going to benefit your animals. And we're not talking about birds today, but I do have chickens, ducks, and parrots, and I use the essential oils with all of them. And my parrots actually love to play in the diffuser. So just a shout out to the birds if you have birds in your life. When you're using them, start slowly. So really 1 to 2 drops in a diffuser at a time is just fine. If your animals are having no negative reactions, then you can use a few more drops. And again, as we've said, make sure to diffuse and with the option that your animal can leave the room. And then when you're introducing an oil to an animal, it's really important to watch for their reactions. Excuse me. You can even introduce an oil with the bottle closed. They can actually smell the bottle, or you can just take the lid off is all you need to do. And one example is my late dog Pepper. She used to get a lot of digestive issues. And whenever I would pull out the digestion, she would literally get up and run out of the room. She did not like the digestion, and she made that very clear. So I found other oils to use with her. I was not going to force that digest zen upon her, even though I was like, well, she really needs it. But we found that Tamer, the kids blend, it's much gentler, it's diluted. She did really well with the Tamer. So positive signs that you can look for are if they lick their lips. Like you can look for a subtle sign, like if I hold, like my dogs love jasmine and rose to the point where they will lick it off my hands, but as soon as they smell it, their little tongue will come out and they'll lick their lips. So if you really pay attention to their body language, you can watch for those negative and positive signs, and then you can proceed with the use after that. And you'll get to know which oils that your animals like and the ones that they don't like. Okay, anything else you want to say here about introducing to pets, Molly?
Another thing I like to do is, especially if you're using like a flea and tick spray, they also really don't want you to spray it on them. So I usually spray it on my hands and hold my hands out and let them come to me. And then I wipe down their bodies with my hands instead of, spraying their whole bodies with it. Because partly it's just the spray that makes them a little nervous sometimes. So yeah, if you're applying it to the dogs, then apply it to your hands, wipe down their bodies. Cats tend to do really well, dogs too. If you just spray a tiny, tiny bit or put like one single drop on their collar, just put one drop of oil on the collar, and that's enough to repel fleas and ticks. Or if you're trying to do a calming thing, you can also make a little bandana for a dog, which is a great way to put some like lavender on there for fireworks and stuff like that. So yeah, they don't necessarily have to go right on the animal's body. They can go onto a piece of fabric that you can take on and off as you want to.
Great. Okay, next slide, Eric. So with internal, I do want to bring attention to some cautions with the doTERRA products, since that's what we're talking about today. You do not want to give your dog xylitol. That's very toxic and dangerous for your animals. So you do not want to use our On Guard toothpaste, our peppermint beadlets, our On Guard beadlets, and or the GX Assist is too intense for the animals. So do not use those products. When you're using internally, you can dip a toothpick in the oil. So if they're not, you don't want to give them a full drop. That's a nice way that you can put some oil and then you can mix that into their food or their water. And then as Molly was saying, it's great to place the oil on your hands first, rub your hands together, let them smell it, and then you can kind of rub that onto their body. I'm going to talk a little bit about that with the topical care. So go ahead and go to the next slide.
I do have one more thing to say. Can I
Oh,
say
yeah.
one more thing about the one tricky thing? So be careful a little bit about putting it in food, especially with cats, because you never want them to stop eating their food. And so if there's any sort of like hesitancy, if you put it in their food and they're fine and they eat fine, great, go ahead and do it. But if they're like, I don't know, don't put it in their food, because then they'll stop eating. And then you have a whole other set of problems on your paws.
Yes, thank you for that. We do want to bring some attention to oils to avoid, which would be wintergreen. Good alternatives are copaiba, frankincense, and aroma touch. Cassia, with alternatives being thyme, oregano, or on guard blend. And of course, tea tree. And instead, you could use geranium, arborvitae, myrrh, or cedarwood. So those are just some good alternatives. The wonderful thing, as you know, if you use the doTERRA essential oils, is so many oils have so many multi-purposes that it's really easy to swap them out. So just be cautious of those oils to avoid. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, and then for topical use, so we've started to touch on this a little bit already. But for instance, if Pluto, sometimes he gets an upset belly, so I will put the oils on my hands. I introduce them to him. He usually will have a sniff and a lick, which is great. I'll rub them on his belly, but also a wonderful place to apply oils is actually on the paws and or on the inner ear. Now, we talk a lot about acupressure and using the acupressure points with people, right? We've talked about that a lot. We can do the same thing with our paws. So if you can take a screenshot of this, but it has the right paw and the left paw, and then you can see the areas that point to the different areas in the body. So you could put a drop of oil on your finger, like say you're having a sinus issue. In that case, I would put some oil in a diffuser, and then I would put some oil on your finger, like breathe, and then I would hold it onto the sinus point of the paw, just like you would if you were treating a human. Anything else you want to say here, Molly?
Just the paws are very absorbent. So it's a good thing to remember for both the positives and the negatives. So remember that dogs don't wear shoes. So if you're out there in the world, be a little careful, like salts on the ice and snow. Those are and chemicals on the ice and snow can be very dangerous coming in through their paws. And then like lawn fertilizers and things like that. So their paws are super, super absorbent and sensitive. So put more good things in and be a little cautious out there in the world of what they walk through. And you can always do a really nice paw rinse with a little bit of apple cider vinegar and water and your favorite scent of essential oil. You can pop that and just either wipe down their paws or put their paw in a little paw dip. And that's a great way to like cleanse them after having been out on a walk in a neighborhood. And also get, your good calming scents and things like that in there.
Next slider. We do want to give you this dilution guide. This is from Dr. Janet Rourke, who uses the essential oils in her practice. And if you actually go to her website, you can download this guide. I'm not going to read through all of it, but it really shows you the size of your animal. So you want to take into consideration the type of animal, the weight of the animal, and then that can help guide you with the dilutions that you would want to dilute the oil. So is there anything, Molly, you want to say about dilution? This is like a little too much to read, but go ahead and take a screenshot of this if you have pets to give you a good guide. And or if you use your intuition, just always weigh on the side of less is more. And like, think about if you were giving those oils to your baby or your infant, you want to kind of treat animals in the same way.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, I usually do it by intuition, but I'm just very mindful in keeping the amounts very small and keeping it very gentle. And this is also why we really love our touch line, because the oils are actually already diluted in a carrier oil for us. So I feel really comfortable using the touch line right out of the bottle.
Yeah, a little goes a long way. And depending on what you're using it for, either diluting in water or a carrier oil. One thing to remember if you're actually addressing any like wounds on the body, you would dilute it in water versus oil because the oil holds the heat into a wound and what you want it to do is cool down. So for like wounds and scrapes and burns and bee stings, use a water or witch hazel instead of oil because you want that to cool down. But if you're working on like a topical flea prevention, then you can certainly use fractionated coconut oil is a great thing to use, or um, almond oil or apricot kernel oil all work really well. And actually, the coconut oil is a great repellent for ticks and fleas. So that's a great one to use as your carrier oil for your other oils that you're adding in there.
So perfect timing, because the next slide is the dreaded flea and tick season is upon us. And I do want to give a shout out to our Terra Shield blend. It's already an amazing blend. It's diluted. You can spray it out of the bottle. It makes it super, super easy. However, I know some of you love to make your own blends, or maybe you only have one oil. So we wanted to give a shout out to the oils that are really effective for fleas and ticks, and also how to make your own recipe. So Molly, why don't you talk a little bit about this, and then we can
Yeah. So before we get into what to use with essential oils, I want to talk a little bit about why you don't want to use chemical flea and tick prevention. And I hesitate to even use the word prevention because it doesn't prevent anything. The fleas and ticks still get on the animal. They still bite the animal. They just die when they drink the blood. So the way that those flea and tick treatments work is that they they're systemic neurotoxins for animals, and that is how they work in the fleas and ticks, but that also affects your dogs and cats. So the reason you don't want to use them is because there are some really, really serious side effects. Flea and tick treatments are one of the leading causes of seizure disorders in dogs. So, they even finally, the FDA has started mandating that the label has listed seizures as one of the possible side effects of conventional flea and tick treatments like Bravecto and Seresto and Trifexis, things like that. Those are kind of some of the common ones you would see. But it does say on the label, one of the possible side effects is seizures. And if it's printed on the label, it doesn't mean that it's possible. It means that it happens. So, that's a really important thing to remember, is that these are the same kinds of pesticides that are sprayed on conventional produce in the orchards and on the fields. They're terrible, terrible toxic chemicals. And, a body may be able to manage that for a short while. But if you're ingesting that every month for your entire life, then the toxic load on the kidneys, all the organs of excretion, the toxic load is so much that you end up with this kind of like toxic overload. That's what oftentimes is the root cause of like this terrible itchy skin, because their bodies are just trying to detox from the chemicals, from the pesticides in the flea and tick treatments. So, this is the reason why there need to be more alternatives. It doesn't stop ticks and fleas from getting on your pet. The fleas and ticks have to bite the animal, drink the blood that has the pesticides in it in order for the fleas and ticks to die. So using an essential oil topical treatment keeps your fleas and ticks from getting on in the first place, and then they won't even get on and bite the animal in the first place. So there are some essential oils that are really effective. So peppermint actually affects the neurologic system of fleas and ticks. And so it's safe for your pets, but it really is not great for fleas and ticks. It's not one of the ones that will like kill them on contact, like cedarwood will actually kill ticks on contact. But the peppermint is a great one to help repel ticks and fleas. And it's interesting because ticks and fleas aren't attracted to an animal that doesn't smell like an animal. So if you have an animal that smells like jasmine or geranium or lemongrass. They're not even interested in it in the first place. So it's super effective as far as a repellent. But then, peppermint, let's see, peppermint, what's my list? Peppermint, cedarwood, and lavender are the three that actually will have a physiological effect on fleas and ticks. So it's part of what will kill them and keep them from keep them from biting your pet. So, there's a really big reason to not use the pesticides. It's one of again, if you're using a topical, conventional flea and tick treatment, at least if something goes wrong, you can wash it off. But if you're giving them a pill every month and they're swallowing this and it's going into their body and something goes wrong, you can't get that out. It's in there. There's no getting it out. So, I usually just advise don't use them at all. There's not really a benefit to them, and you can do just as well or better with essential oils.
Yes, I have never used them, and I've had dogs for years. I've
Yeah,
never had
I
an
have never used them either.
And I definitely, keep an eye on them in the summer, but
Yeah,
I've used the oils. And I do want to give a shout out to the TerraShield because when I was first with doTERRA, I actually went to Haiti where malaria is a big threat. And I was scared and I had barely used the oil, so my trust wasn't there. And I went and bought some DEET just in case. And thank goodness I actually never opened it. And I used the oils, and that kept away the mosquitoes as well as scabies. And I was exposed to a scabie infested bed and I did not get scabies. So
great.
that's my big testimonial for truly how powerful these are.
Yeah,
If you are not seeing the presentation, we have the oils lavender, peppermint, cedarwood, clove, eucalyptus, lemongrass, and geranium. If you want to make your own blend, you can, neem oil is a super effective anti-bug oil and or the fractionated coconut oil. And then you would mix that in an 8-ounce bottle. You would top it off with water and you could adjust your oil usage again based on the size of your animal. So there's a kind of a general recipe for you, and or you can also use the TerraShield, and if you want to add some extra oils to that, you can do it that way as well. There's really no wrong way to do this here. It's just a matter of using it
yeah.
and
And I will say
adjusting
that
it to your pet.
in your in the one of the common questions is how often do I have to apply this? So I live in the land of ticks. There are ticks everywhere where I live. And so what I do is I have each time before I go for a walk, I will just put some oils on my hands and I'll wipe down the dogs before we go out for a walk in the grasses. But if you're living in a city where you don't have ticks in the city, you really don't need to use them all that often. And I say kind of as a prevention, you can maybe do it once a week if you're not out and about in the woods and the grasses. But if you're going to go out for a hike, then absolutely before you head out, use your oils to get out there, get it on their bodies before you get out there in the woods.
Yes, exactly. Really dependent on your situation. I know
Yeah.
Molly's or Josie's heading to Tickland, and so we were talking, she probably wants to put it on her dog every time, and he's really low to the ground
Yeah,
every time you go outside, right? So
definitely.
let's go ahead. We're running out of time. We have a little bit
Oh, you
more.
are? I wanted to ask, do you
Oh,
just
go
do it
for
on
it.
the back? Do you just rub it down their back, or do you try and get underneath and in the kind of under,
Yeah,
back
good,
legs
good
and
question.
armpit areas?
So, yeah, good question. So ticks specifically, they like to be where the blood is closest to the surface. So, a lot of times I'll do like under the armpits, around the neck, behind the ears.
Uh-huh.
I don't do it anywhere around the eyes or the nose again because they're so sensitive. Their olfactory systems are so sensitive. But definitely under the collar, anywhere where the skin is fairly thin and the blood is close to the surface.
Okay.
So Molly, do you want to start off talking about if you have a dog, especially, you probably dread 4th of July.
Yeah, for sure.
And those fireworks, especially if you have an animal that gets anxious. I mean, it's really horrible to watch your little fur baby suffering and trembling and hiding. So we have a lot of tips. And so Molly, why don't you kick us off on this slide?
Yeah, yeah. So there are a few things. So first of all is be sure that your pets have their tags on, because more animals are in shelters the day after 4th of July than any other time of the year. So be sure that they have their identification on. Even if they're microchipped, be sure that they have a tag on, because there's just, dogs and cats don't have any perception of why this horrible thing is happening out there in the world. To them, it doesn't make any sense. They don't have the understanding of this is a holiday and this is fun and people are enjoying it. So it's terrifying for most pets. So some things that you can do preventively: make sure they have their tags on, give them a lot of exercise early in the day so that they're already physically worn out and a little bit more tired. In your home, give them a safe space. Make sure they have a safe space, and you can put on music or white noise or the sound of rain or something that kind of takes up the audible space in your house and can kind of drown out what's happening outside. It's a little hard to do that because it sounds like a war zone outside sometimes. Another great thing, if you haven't ever tried it, is called a thunder shirt. And it's like a swaddle for a dog. They make them for cats too. And it's like wearing a hug. It's like helps them feel secure in their bodies. So those are kind of environmental and physical things that you can do to help kind of take the edge off of this very traumatic holiday for dogs and cats. And then there are, there are Western herbs that are really helpful. There are homeopathics that are really helpful. CBD can be really helpful. Those are all things that you'll find at a local pet supply store, and they can be tremendously helpful. The thunder shirt has a little patch on it that's intended for use with essential oils. It's really cute. It's like this, wearing this little hug, and then there's this little patch right at their chest, and it's a place where you put your drops. I really love to use lavender and chamomile. Those are kind of my two favorites as far as like the most effective calming essential oils. So yeah, use your thunder shirt, use the oils, and different dogs and cats respond to different therapies. So now is a good time to start experimenting to see what your particular pet resonates with. Sometimes some animals really respond to internal things like valerian tincture or CBD. Other pets respond really well to the thunder shirts. Other pets respond really well to like diffused oils that create sort of a calm environment. So start now before the horrible day comes and start experimenting with what it is that your particular pets resonate most with. The diffuser is a really great thing to do in preparation for 4th of July. I really like to just start 2 weeks before, and it creates a calm environment and a safe space. And my dogs actually, they feel really, really safe in the bedroom. And so if there is ever a scary thing in the world, actually all the pets go to the bedroom. Like they will all, I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, and I have my diffuser in there, and they will all just of their own will go in there and curl up. That's their safe space. So notice where it is that they feel safe already and use that as your kind of jumping off point for all of the sort of other treatments that you're going to be doing.
Yes. Yes. This is just a whole call in itself, is
Yeah,
just
it
like
is. It
the
really
4th
is.
of
It
July.
really is.
So I do want to give a shout out to a couple of products here. Our Serenity, wait, we're not quite done yet, Air. Our Serenity Sleep Stick has valerian in it.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
that is a wonderful product to rub on your hands and massage into your dog and see how they like it first. And I would even, use this prior. This, of course, is amazing for us as well. Now, this diffuser blend actually comes from a dog rescue, some other people in our community, and this is their go-to blend. They use lavender, serenity, balance, and whisper. Is their tranquility blend. And then calming oils are lavender, Roman chamomile, frankincense, copaiba, ylang ylang, and clary sage. I think Josie said that her dog loves the magnolia and copaiba. Is that what you said, Jose? And then Ismali mentioned calming herbs, valerian root, chamomile, and passion flower. So, and really, like, the prep is also really important. Wearing your dog out, like taking them for a good run or a good walk, having high value toys, having other, music or the TV on in the room. So kind of doing the collection of all of these things and making it so you're not trying, it's a little too late if you do none of this and then you hear the fireworks and you're like, oh, now I'm going to turn the diffuser on. So think of it as something that you are prepping for, and that's really going to help offset some of the trauma and anxiety. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We're almost out of time. We have a couple more slides to go through. So poison oak does happen. And oils that can be helpful with this are lavender, peppermint, and then as Molly was saying, using the witch hazel is very calming and cooling, and you can use this every couple hours. Molly, I'm just gonna blast through these, but if there's anything you want to add, by all means, just chime in.
Sure thing.
Go ahead, Erin. Next slide. We just wanted to kind of give you some ideas for some of these common issues. So allergies. I mean, Molly did talk about this already. The first place you really want to address is the diet. Absolutely 100%. Using products, the nettles, bee pollen, manuka, probiotics are really important. If you're dealing with allergies, again, think of it like as humans, you want to address the gut health. And then with the doTERRA products, the Tri-Ease supplements actually have lavender, peppermint, and lemon. This would be inappropriate for a dog, not so much for a cat. Or you could use these oils in a diffuser. And then another thing to be very aware of is what cleaning products are you using in your home? As we said, your animals are super sensitive. So if you're using toxic cleaning products or hope to gosh, nobody on this call is using a Glade diffuser in their home, but some people still are, those products need to be removed. I mean, if your animal is having allergies, addressing the diet and removing those toxic products from the home is a really good place to start. Our doTERRA products, we have the On Guard cleaning line as well as the Abode. All of that is totally safe and effective to use in your home for the whole family. So please swap out your toxic cleaning products.
I
Anything
want
here
to,
with allergies?
I was going to say allergies is we should do a whole other podcast on allergies because it's got its entire realm of things we can talk about.
Yes, we can have you back. We just did
yeah,
one for humans, but we could do an allergies for pets.
we should. I want to give a little bit of I want to show you a book that's really, really amazing. It's called the Forever Dog Life Book, and it has a whole section in the back on non-toxic essential oil cleaning products for your house and for your pets. It has how to make your own flea and tick shampoo with essential oils and Castile soap. And there are flea and tick sprays and spritzes and how to clean pet bedding with essential oils. So this is, if you haven't seen this book yet, this is like a game changer for, you know, how we're going to treat our pets as, not as humans, but like their bodies are temples just like ours, and they deserve all of the same things that we do for ourselves. So if you want a good reference for some of the things that we've touched on today, inclusive of the essential oils, this is a fantastic book. So highly recommend it.
We are at the top of the hour, but we just have a couple slides left. So if you need to go, thank you. But I will very quickly wrap up the rest of the presentation here. Cuts, scrapes, and wounds do happen. My go-to is the Correct X blend. It actually has all of these oils in it, and it's super effective. And or individually, you can use frankincense, copaiba, helichrysum, lavender, and or diluted peppermint are all really great go-tos for the wounds. I love the Correct X. It's easy. I keep it in my purse. It's already diluted in the coconut oil, and it's super effective. Let's go to the next slide, Erin.
Yeah, sorry. It's not, for some reason it's not changing. So
Oh, I think our next slide was a bee sting. And we had an example of one of our team members' dogs got stung right in the eye. And the oil basil is really effective for bee stings and purify. And so as you see here, Petra was especially intrigued by bees. She was a slow learner in that they didn't want to play with her, and she got stung on different occasions. I used both basil and the cleansing blend Purify to help, and they both work quickly and effectively. Just by putting a drop on the area in this instance, just be careful to, especially when you're using around the eyes, definitely dilute and use very sparingly. But that's truly how effective they are for wounds. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I do want to just bring a shout out of awareness to two things: hot cars and hot pavement. I don't think we can truly understand like how detrimental this can be to your animals. And I especially want to be you to be aware of, because of course, when it's 95 degrees, that seems really obvious. But when it's 70 degrees, you might think, oh, 70-degree weather, we're okay. But in 16 minutes, your car can reach the temperature of 113 degrees. So and even in 10 minutes, your car is 89 degrees. So just be super, super aware of hot cars with your dogs, because that can be so detrimental so quickly. And a good test for pavement is to put the back of your hand on the pavement for 5 seconds and see if you can hold your hand there. And if not, be mindful of your dog's paws. And can you go walk them on grass or on a trail and not necessarily on super hot pavement? Molly, is there anything else you want to add about just these cautions?
No, I think you've covered the bases, but I do want to address, Rebecca keeps asking if all of these things are okay for cats too. And I just want to say, always give cats a choice. They're much more sensitive than dogs are to everything. So I think absolutely cats tend to respond really well to essential oils. They also respond really well to homeopathics and Bach flower essences. But just remember, like those little things for cats have such big effects. So, you know, if you have more questions about cats, I'm happy to answer them or help where I can, because cats can be a little bit different than dogs. So yes, they're appropriate for cats too, but cats are different than dogs and they're much more sensitive. So just remember that when offering these kind of holistic choices to cats.
I'd also like to give a plug for this book. It's called ADR2, the Animal Desk Reference. It's essential oils for animals. They have all the oils in it. They have topical mixing. I know we're short on time, so I won't go into it, but tons of information. Absorption. It's great for dogs, cats, birds. And so do some research. I'm a cat owner, and so definitely do your research for all animals, in particular for cats.
Will you send me that link and I'll add that to our newsletter. And we'll send out this presentation and the references to the books, to Molly's Pet Store, in the newsletter as well. So if you're not signed up for that, make sure and go to our hellovisionary.life website and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, we're almost done here. Next slide. These are our references. As Molly had mentioned, the Forever Dog. And then I also did want to give a shout out to the Spoil Your Pet,
It's
which
a
is
great book.
which
Yeah.
is all essential oils, and it gives you recipes specifically for cats, for dogs. It's written by a vet, and this is a really great reference for everything you need. And our last slide is Miss Molly. She is at Dog River Pet Supply. Follow her on Instagram. Go check out her website. Her pet shop is award-winning. She was just featured in a national magazine and won a top award. Her store is really like no other. It is awesome. So if you are going through Hood River, it's definitely worth a stop to say
Come
hello.
visit. Yeah, we'd love to meet
She,
you.
and you also ship, don't you, Molly?
Oh
Like you
yeah,
ship
for sure.
food
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
do consults.
yep.
So you can reach out to Molly if you need help with your animal. She is a wealth of information. So I want to thank you so very much because I know you're also so incredibly busy
You bet.
with this time and being here with us today. I love you so much and you're
Love
so
you.
valuable, and thank you. I hope you all appreciated this. And next week, we are going to be talking about frankincense and castor oil. We're going to talk about a little bit of the myths, things you want to be cautious about, and then also how to use the power of this duo, frankincense and castor oil, which you'll see is all over. It's the TikTok rage right now, but we want to make sure that you are doing these old ancient practices appropriately and not necessarily just following all the TikTok stars on how to use your frankincense and castor oil. So thank you all so much. Have a great day. And this recording will be sent out on Wednesday. Thank you,
Thank
Molly.
you.
Bye.
Welcome. Thank you.